This Hangout on air is now live. It's extemporaneous. It's casual. It's brought to you by 3 o'clock in the morning and what feels like 3 o'clock in the morning to me. My special guest for this chat is Sameoldji. Still Sameoldji after all this time. How you
Yeah,
doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
You look
It's
pretty good for someone in the middle of the night.
well, yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I had much on my mind.
All right. Well, what are we talking about?
So we have this issue here about the rupture in culture, and
That's right.
I posted people who followed the story on the video. I mean, I don't want to repeat myself, but after listening to your video response on my video about 7C second edition, we were chatting, and I think we find the sweet spot where we have disagreement.
Maybe. Yes.
Yes, so that's an interesting situation. So the way I understand it, and then I will let you describe it, is
Okay.
that I was coming from a mechanical perspective. I was saying that the rupture in culture is about the role, where you have the role, and the authority, the authority that you give to the individuals, either the player or the GM, whatever the players of the game, towards stories. So if you give, for example, in 7C, I'm sorry, I'm tired, but if you give it in 7C second edition, if you write your story arc and advance at character creation to organize your advancement mechanically, and then after that you have the procedure of when you have a conflict, and you tell everything in advance during the procedure before you roll the dice, and then the player gets to organize how he wants the story to happen according to what has been described before, right? So I was saying that, to me, the rupture in culture is this moment where you have a story in advance, written in advance, and that is mechanically embedded in a way that you cannot go around it. Nobody, I mean, the GM cannot fiat around it. The player cannot just go around it, whatever they want. The procedure is there. And so I said, for some there's a kind of player who don't have the effect of surprise in that. Now they don't like that because they don't feel like there is a surprise. Now you come in your response saying that that's not the issue. The issue is the issue is not about the mechanic or the type of game or the way we play or of anything like that, because the gamers will adapt. A different game is just a different way of doing it. And so your point is that the problem, the rupture, there is a rupture, but I think your point is that the rupture is in our conception of what a story is. And now you go on a way more abstract level, saying that basically, if you say thing in advance, you don't play to find out, right? Well, this is the thing where we're gonna have to discuss.
Okay. Cool.
Well,
And I mostly agree with your description of what I think, but there is some difference. Sorry, I should have typed that better. So yeah, definitely your point was about the mechanics. I got that. And of course there are going to be people who don't like change, or who don't have time to deal with change, or whatever it is. But they're going to
that's
come
how.
up against, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a different topic.
Yeah.
And so they walk away from this kind of game. But once they're playing it, I do believe that they'll adapt. They'll find their way to have fun in this different way, especially if they are enjoying their characters. Characters will be the motivation to get them through this learning period, I think. The surprise, I feel, is tied to, because there can still be surprises in what you've described. I've written out my story arc in advance, but it's not a guaranteed success. So oh crap, how could I possibly have failed that? Will always be surprising. Or I had no way to succeed here, and yet I did. How amazing. I mean, there will always be surprise. But there will be some surprises like Luke, I am your father, which are not going to happen or would be far harder to orchestrate. Uh, and those kinds of surprises where someone is riffing on your character concept and adding in something that you never considered but fits perfectly, that require a lot of that GM trust that you talked about. And when we shift the mechanic or when we shift the narration around, finding our way back to that kind of story will be hard, I feel. But my point was or the absence of story is really where the roots of this cultural rupture come from, rather than a few levels up where we run into the mechanics of how to make that happen.
All right, so now the thing though that I think we don't agree is that you seem to make a point about, because I in the chat I said, what bugs you with writing stuff in advance? Because the
Right.
thing is all about the stuff that is written in advance. Like either it's said in the procedure by the GM or the players, or it is written on the sheet in advance, like in 7C, Burning Wheel, or Shock, or some kind of game like that, where you write goals in advance, you write a couple of stuff in advance. So the game is supposed to go in that direction. This is the kind of arc we're aiming at. And you are making a point that this is not the type of story, or it's a conception of what a story is that will not allow to play to find out in a pure form. Because you seem to make the point about that. You see, this is what I got is that you make the point that, yeah, but if you put people, if you put character in situation,
Yeah.
and there's nothing written, it's just the story, because the story is what we look back when we look
Right.
back.
Yes. That's my point.
You know what I'm saying? That the story is when we look back on what we decided to do with the actions that the character took place. Now,
And then
if
we discover what the story is after.
there
Hey,
you
that was a
go.
pretty good story.
Yeah, there you go. So that is your conception of story. I mean, you say, because in not your, but maybe your favorite, but this is the where the rupture is for you, is like you have the people who need to play to find out for real, like not written in advance, and you know what I'm saying. So
the characters have goals. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a character, maybe for a one shot, where somebody said, quick, make a 5-minute D&D character, or here, use this pre-gen or something, where I didn't have some kind of purpose of being for the character, some direction that they were traveling. But play for me has been about exploring that character, and that exploration as a byproduct of story. But me sitting down at the table to play had nothing to do with story and everything to do with character. So I don't play a role-playing game because of the story we're going to make. I play a role-playing game because of the interactions we're going to have through the characters, or the decisions I have to make with the tools that character has available to them. And so when I'm playing that way and discover that I'm in somebody's planned story, or if someone's asking me to say, okay, so for the arc of your character, we're in the second act of a 3-act play, then there's this huge disconnect. Like, what are you talking about? We don't know what act we're in. Why would there be a number of acts? Why are you laying your filter or your trope over my experience? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so obviously, well, we all agree that there's a different ranges of game that provide for different way of doing that. But if I look at let's say, I don't know, if I look at 7C, for example, you write a couple of sentences at the beginning, character creation, and you get to advance, add some stat in the character on the character sheet, so level up kind of thing. There's no level, but just
Improvement
advance.
is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah, improvement. And then when you reach these sentences, when you achieve that arc, that as a player that you written yourself and you chosen in advance, Now it might not gonna happen. You describe it in your video. You say you might not gonna achieve it. You might not gonna, and so it's never gonna be like, okay, here's the number of acts. It's just a sentence. It's just a small sentence
Right,
on
sure.
the sheet. But it's in the contract. It's kind of like since it's on the sheet. It's like it's in the social contract of, okay, together, this is what we're gonna play. Now we have a goal. We have a purpose as a group. And to me, the strength of this type of gaming is that it takes away all kind of issues that you get and frustrations. Like when you get together, you know what you're gonna play, you know what you get into, you know you're gonna have fun. But if you have nothing, if it's just in the emptiness, I think this is the word you say, the emptiness of the story or the
The
nothingness of
absence of story.
absence of story or something like that. You said something like that in your video. It's like that's cool, that's fine. But the thing is that if you play with four other people and they don't have any idea neither what's gonna happen or in what direction it goes or whatever, and if you don't have a group of people you go along with, or if I don't know if the story goes in a direction or if the situation goes in a certain direction or whatever, and then you start to lose perspective on your character and what's going on, and because
Well,
there's and it
but
creates.
that's true. But if that was your style of play, if you were aware that this is your style of play, then the situation you're describing would really be player error. That's where you as the player are taking the game. It would be like not writing out your sentence goal in 7C and saying, well, I'm just going to play. And then wondering why your character can never improve or develop or advance because you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was not talking about that, but I was just saying, like, when you play a game where there's no organization of story in advance, you know, let's put it that way.
We need another word for story, or like story A, meaning no story, or the emergent story, or the post product byproduct story, and story X being the
I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but since
either.
there seems to be an A and B. So A is you have no story in advance, and B, you have some kind of organization in the form of sentences.
Or
Basically,
whatever.
that's how the game does it, right?
Right.
The different variation of this way of doing it is just a sentence, right? So yeah. So to me, yeah. So the rupture for you is that when there's an organization in advance for a certain type of player like you and some other I've discussed with, is that it feels like, why are we playing now that we?
Yeah. Or that we're playing for the sake of the story.
It's like a masturbation somehow, right? Like
That's a very extreme one. I mean, that's like the okay. Uh, an intro character has a 75% chance to succeed. They have a whole bunch of bonuses available to them, and the game presupposes that they'll survive every encounter. That starts to feel like the masturbation aspect to me, like where the game system is protecting the characters and the game genre is putting them at risk. But the risk is false because the game system is protecting. That's where it goes to masturbation for me. But or seeming like masturbation for me. But the focus shifts to being one of creating a story together. Whereas I guess my default view, or like the way we approached it when we were learning how to play, was that the focus was on the character. So you were playing a role. It was a role-playing game. You had a role, and there was no talk ever of stories or being the stars or anything. We simply had these characters who were in a place at a certain time, and things were going on, and sometimes we ignored them because we had our own goals, and sometimes our goals aligned with those things. Sometimes the decisions turned out to be epic, and sometimes they were brutally horrible slogs of despair, which were still interesting. But the idea was the character was growing, the character was experiencing, the character was developing, and then there were these things that you'd pull out of it that you'd talk about at school or after the game or whatever. Like, it was so cool when you did X, Y, or Z. The focus was always character. There was no intention to create story. There was an intention to be able to make decisions in a framework like the heroes of books, but bringing the book to life where you weren't constrained by page counts, you weren't constrained by chapters, arcs, trilogies, or whatever. You got to be the hero, or not, as it were. So that's the difference for me. That's the real disconnect, where it seems like in a game like what? Well, in a game like 7C, if I'm planning out these short-term or long-term goals for my character, and that's tied to how my character will improve, then I'm thinking about the story of the character. I'm thinking about the arc of the character, what I hope it will be, and then enjoying or thrilling to what it actually turns out to be. But still, I'm focused on, in some way, the story. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it is. Now, to me, my concern is that I don't understand. No, I understand. I mean, it's not that I don't. I totally get it. But it's like,
why does it matter?
No. To me, the thing is, the reason why I prefer having an organization of story in advance, either as a procedural thing in a conflict situation or just the overall game,
right?
To discuss together as a group, is that, to me, this is where the agency lies in the difference between a game where you don't. Because the thing is that you discuss about GM Fiat. Well, I understand now. It's not now. I'm gonna have to be careful the words I use, because the way you describe GM Fiat is not necessarily the way I was thinking about it, right? Like, to me, GM Fiat was very pejorative. It was not.
I think that's what is meant by it.
Yeah, but it's not, because to me, it's not just the GM says what's happened after the roll. To me, GM Fiat is the GM impose his agenda upon the results. So now that's more nasty, right?
Yeah, and that's definitely how it's being used now.
That's how I use it when I use it. But the thing is, yes.
So now we can't even say that, like a GM decision, it seems like it's somehow less of a game, or it's like a bad thing. When
you may go ahead.
No, like when you turn it around, it's like, well, in a system that's pass or fail, where the game master is the one who's not playing a character and is instead playing the world. If if for every success it's, well, what happens, and if for every failure it's like, well, I'm terribly sorry, but I have to impose this consequence on you. There's not a lot of fun in that. So working with and collaborating with the players around the table on a success, not a failure, was kind of how the game master played early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with some guys who told you what you did, and it wasn't much fun. And I played with other guys who worked with you and your description, like we mechanically incentivize now in modern games, and those were the people that you wanted to play with. So, I mean, a lot of the modern games are trying to recreate the good stuff of what was happening by luck.
Yes, that's a good point, and this is, yes, you're definitely right. And there's a guy in the comment section of my video that says, I good video, but I don't agree with you, because I do it in my games with the people I play with without using these rules. Like, right. I do it just because this is how we play, and I understand that. I totally get it. Now, the reason why I like these games so much is that they sabotage you. You have no choice. You play that game. If you play by the rules, you don't have the fiat. You don't have the problem. You have all the agency you need. Even if you're a lazy player, you have no choice. You have to write the sentence. Like
And
you can
it makes the dictator easier to spot if you have read the rules.
actually the game dictates, and you know what I find that that's the thing is that to me these elements of telling that when it's mechanically embedded that you can tell that you organize this, not tell the story but organize the story in advance, the character, the protagonist and all that, and it's mechanically embedded, the game runs itself afterward. Like if the GM does a bad job, the game's gonna be nice either way because it's well structured and it's well organized mechanically. So just the story will end up, doing well. If the players are, not proactive, they don't do nothing, they just wait for something. Well, the procedure is so engaging. You have no choice to say something. So at the end of the day, the result is always good. But when a game, now I'm gonna use a word, but the traditional game, I don't know how to use it now. But let's say a game,
I know.
I say modern versus old school. I don't know, but it's not even old school. But a game with no element like that,
Right.
what's gonna happen is that you're gonna have way more often random sessions. Random. Sometimes it's gonna be good. Sometimes it's not gonna be good. Sometimes the GM will be fiating his way around because he's tired, and the players are lazy that night or tired as well, so they don't do a good job, and so the GM has to push forward more, and so now you need a bigger social
And,
contract.
and
Anyway,
of course, that's why we have this evolution.
yeah,
There are going to be nights where the game wasn't good, and is there a way for the system to help me when I'm not up to it? Or there are
yeah.
these new players out there who just don't play the way that we always played, and is there a way to use the system to make that the default, make
Yeah.
the old way we played the default? And we're seeing these games all over the place now.
It's a
And
trend. It's a trend, and I gotta admit that I like this trend because I mean I'm from this era, right? I'm 4-year-old in the hobby, almost 5. So I'm from that generation. I've tried both ways, and to me, I just find it more. I find that the sessions are just more regular. It's more consistent.
sure.
Right? It's like the fun is always there because it's supported by the mechanic, and the stories are always good. And the thing is that these games, they are structured in a way that it's gonna always create the same kind of story. So you play that game, and that kind of story is gonna happen. And now that's what you want. You play that. That's not what you want. You play that one. That one will give you this one. This is what you need. You give it to you. And so
So
I'm
I got
like,
a question for you.
yeah, go ahead.
I've been talking about how important character is to me and how unimportant story is. Would What are your thoughts on that? I mean, as a goal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point, actually, and you're right when you say that the a difference between character and story. When I'm listening to myself talking, I never talk about characters. I
Mhm.
always talk about story. I'm like, yeah, the story, the arc, and we need the arc. And now thinking in terms of character, just like my character, I'm playing that individual. Um, to me, I find it interesting, but at the same time, I find it risky because I feel like, yeah, well, how am I tied to this other one? Do we have the same vision of what we want to play? So I don't have that individualistic. I'd rather have a kumbaya approach, right? Where okay, what are we trying to do?
Give peace a chance.
Because well, that's my. Yeah,
So, like a million years ago when I first started playing games, you'd have people show up with like an evil character in a shady profession, and they'd be next to some kind of holy warrior, and the frail mage who never wanted to, leave safety, at least not without 50 or 60 armed guards and nonsense. And you're thinking, how would these people ever agree on anything? And yet somehow we always manage to find a way to make it make sense. Except some groups I would meet, they would just sit there and argue. You can't do that, and whatever. They would find a way to make it not fun for themselves. Some groups would find a way to make it fun, and some groups would find a way to make it not fun. And now we have a lot of advice about social contracts, or we have games that say, don't worry about the characters. Let's focus on the story, right? For whatever reason, these people are together. You guys figure out the reason, and then it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to express it. I don't know, man. I don't know how to I don't know how to, because to me it's the clash, the rupture is right there, right? It's in front of us, and it's
right.
how can we agree? How can we? Because to me, I mean, you say you want to look back over what we've done. In order to be able to do that, I need not to foresee. And I'm like, no, I'd rather foresee.
Right.
Because I want to make sure that when we look back, we're not lost, right?
Right. So that's the thing. So this is why I tend to think that it really is this preference for discovery, or preference for not discovery is not the word I want, but anyway, your position on the timeline of awareness of the story. I want to be at the leading edge. I want to know nothing about what's coming, but have a good sense of where I've been. And you want to be in the middle of the timeline, I think, know what the lead up to who you are is, and have a good idea of where you're going, and try and make that happen. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's good. It sounds right. Now I have you made me realize something though. The reason why I'm willing to sacrifice surprise, or sacrifice the idea of pure exploration to find out, right? The reason why I'm willing to sacrifice that by mechanically embedding narrative structures that allow me to organize the thing is it's because I'd rather have a satisfying experience for my buck. That's honestly, as a gamer, I mean, I've been frustrated. I discussed this recently on my French channel. I've been frustrated so much trying to play Shadowrun and Pathfinder in the past, and 3.5, right, and not understanding what was going on. I was like, man, why it's so... I mean, you guys have listened to my video, you know. So then I find out, oh, that was missing. That's the thing that was missing. It's just a good organization as a group that is mechanically supported. So we play the game. It's like, wow, now it comes full circle, and then the engine runs itself, and nobody is waiting on somebody to do anything. I'm like, wow, okay, that's good. So we can argue that it's taste. It's a matter of taste, of gameplay. But for me, it's a matter of efficiency. Like, it's like, if I don't want to go to a table and then start to play, and after 40 minutes, 45 minutes of my 4-hour session with these people, realizing that I'm wasting my time, and it's gonna be a fucking boring ass session now because nobody was on the same page at the beginning, and then
right,
and then nothing is supporting my perspective on the story. And
so it's easier to get that experience,
yeah,
with a game you recognize that supplies that.
yeah.
That's for sure. Or if, I guess in the old days, it was done by reputation. Like, Tom's game is awesome. If you get a chance to play in Tom's game, do it.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. It's completely different in terms of culture. And now, my point I was trying to make in my video is that the old timers, the old guys, the Tom, right? Tom that used to have a reputation, that kids was knocking at his door, can I play in your game, Tom?
No.
Like, I'm full. No? And well, now Tom is opening 7C second edition, and he's like, fuck you, I'm not doing this shit. Like, I'm not gonna let the player decide in advance. I'm not gonna have to follow their decision. Because that's the other thing, is that if the player has the agency to write how his advancement is gonna happen, or how he wants it to happen. Well,
Well,
now
see,
this game has
now
nothing.
we're assuming that Tom wrote stories in advance and Tom chose outcomes for people, right? I think the Tom that did that is definitely saying, wow, the Seventh Sea is not for me, I'm not going to play it. But maybe the
Yeah, I
reason why
think,
people were knocking on Tom's door is because they had empowerment. They felt like they were a part of something, that they had choice, and they were satisfied with how they were contributing to changing the world and the campaign. And so, I mean, I don't know if we can pin the old grognard or whatever down to being someone who refuses to allow agency on the other side of the screen.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, obviously not. Obviously not. Yeah, yeah. No, I was just saying, like, for
There
example,
are people like that though.
obviously, but I was saying that, for someone who has been playing all his life, and he has a fluid rhetoric and repartee with the people, and so and with the player he's playing with. So when he sees that he's going to be constrained to follow those sentences, it's,
Yeah,
why would I constrain myself to do that?
it's not
Well,
as much. Maybe it's not as much fun, or doesn't align with his perception of fun
yeah,
at that point.
obviously, but I think Call of Cthulhu 7 edition, I think it was one of your points actually. One of the yeah, and I wanted to talk with you about that because in your long review where you say
I
it's
wonder
not
if
going to
anybody
be the
watched
game
that
for
to the
me.
end.
You mentioned it a little bit. Now there's a procedure where people discuss what's going to happen.
Right in the middle of a tense scene.
Yeah, right in the middle of a scene. Now they have a discussion. And to me, the discussion is that's the thing. This is how we tell a story together. Otherwise,
Meaning that you have no interest in looking through the eyes of the character for that moment, or trying to get some kind of
yeah, that's
empathic response in the moment where the dice rolling becomes a physical metaphor for whatever action might be taking place. We're going to stop suddenly and say, whoops, I as the player have just failed. My character now freeze frames. We have a discussion about, do I or do I not want to apply a mechanic, right? So we were going for an emotional response in a game about atmosphere and fear. We're at the moment where that's about to happen, that's about to pay off, and it's one of the reasons why some people play the game. We're going to say, whoa, no excitement for you. Before that, we're going to have this discussion, and then we have to start up again, and the moment is
then the
lost.
fear, then the fear and the
Okay,
anxiety.
now remember, you were really scared just a second ago, so feel that.
You're that's a good point for Call of Cthulhu though.
Just for
Uh,
Call of Cthulhu, I love the mechanic. I love it. It's fantastic. I don't want to use it in that game.
yeah, yeah. I know that's the point that was missing. I remember now. In a game like 7C though, which is pulp, it's easy to see the guy in the air, hanging from a chandelier. Stop. All right, so we do this. Okay, play again, and then he does his backflip and all that. It doesn't matter. People
It
are
doesn't
laughing.
matter. Yeah,
Yeah,
and in fact, it's how many pulps are presented to us. Sudden scene changes, split parties, and flipping back and forth, freeze frame saying, tune in next week and find out if our hero is impaled or eaten by the alligator. I mean,
there you go. There you go.
so it fits. So,
So,
um,
so
yeah.
how can we summarize the rupture? Like, how can we make it clear now? Like, from what we've discussed, because it's not that easy. It's still We can still see it as simply like
We seem to have identified two things. One, playing without an awareness of story ahead of you, and playing with some awareness of some story ahead of you. So
that's
that,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and playing with a focus on that story, or playing with a focus solely on your character.
Yeah, and in the first one, it's important to say mechanically supported, because you can play a World of Darkness game, for example, organize the chapters in advance and tell this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen in advance, but there's no mechanic to support it. So it's important that we talk
Right.
about these games that mechanically support it, because you have to actually play that way.
Well,
Not
that's where the source of a lot of frustration with that particular example came from. Is the game is telling you write stories, and then the mechanics are saying botch. Sorry, you're all dead.
so yeah, so this is some I think so. Now that's what's interesting when we say when we look at this now, is that it doesn't matter STG or RPG,
Mm.
indie games or traditional game or whatever we want to call it. I think the best word now, the word I want to start using is modern game,
Sure,
because because instead of saying indie game, I mean, it doesn't mean anything,
it really doesn't.
you know. And now with 7C second edition, it was the reason why I was so pointing my finger on this one, is that it's a traditional game. Basically, it used to be. Now it's
Reborn.
becoming a hybrid.
Yeah.
So it's a good example of what a modern game, according to the trends right now, the trend in RPG will look like. So you have an RPG, you have a character sheet, you have advancement, you have stats, but you have story game elements in it that organize the play in a way that you get what you want as an experience. And because the thing, if you look at the indie games like Fiasco or Siren, these games where they do one thing and one thing only, and they do it good. Every time you play, it's the same thing. Now that was something that is something that it was a need. It's a need that expressed itself from the gamer community. That like some of the gamers wanted their money for their buck. They wanted, I want to sit at this table and I want to play that, and I want that to happen.
Right.
And so now with a game like 7C, they managed to have both world kind of thing. Like you get an experience that is structured and organized with procedures. Now this is a thing, procedures, right? This is a new way of dealing with conflict. We
Yeah.
have a procedure now.
Don't
It's not
worry, we have a
just
procedure for that.
no, it's not just roll the dice, pass or fail, blah blah blah. It's not that anymore. It's really conflict based. That's why in my video I said we go from a task based versus a conflict based, and I think we're going toward that as well at the same time. But yeah,
But does that really conflict? No, that's not the way. Do those mechanics in and of themselves cause the rupture? This is the part where I think they don't.
oh yeah, yeah. I think you're making a good point. You're making a good point. I think they are part of it though, because one of the things that might scare these people that doesn't want to play these games, because the reason why there's a rupture is because some people, they don't want to play that.
Right.
I'm staying at the first ed. I don't go to the second ed example.
Yeah.
So there's a rupture. So I think the mechanic are just a part. You said it's a symptom, maybe you something like that.
Right.
You mentioned a symptom, but it's a part, because if some GMs who are used to play like back in the day, what they do is that they take away the rule. They house rule it. Take away
Sure.
the rule. We don't do it. We don't use that. We don't use that. Now they cannot, because now these games, they are organized in a way that if you cannot take that, if you take that element out, it doesn't work. So that, for it's part of the thing. But I think your point is more valid. Actually, it's more on according to reality. It's a matter of you know conception of a story. Do you want to look back on what you did, not knowing in advance, or you want to organize a little bit and then go through the
Right. And I mean, we're going to see more and more games that aren't about any of this. They're not about character, and they're not really about story either. They're about something else.
like what?
So,
Like what?
well, just focusing on relationships or focusing on periods of history. Tonight we're going to sit down and play a game where like Microscope, where we create a universe. And the idea of story or character, in the sense that we've been talking about in a game like 7C, don't really relate. So how am I going to react on a night of that? Am I going to be fidgeting in my chair because I'm wondering what my character would do if I had one, if I could have one? And
but in your video response, though, I'm gonna make a video tomorrow as well. But in your video response, you reminded me of something really important, and I'd like to I need to elevate my language when I speak in RPG, in the sense of, instead of making categories, maybe just spreading out. It's like there's a range of game, and there's a range of how to play them. Now, there is a certain area of the range where the games are so gamist that there's one way to play. There's one way to play. It's not flexible. You play that way, and that's all. Otherwise, you play it wrong. But if you go on the the end of the spectrum, it's more fluid. It's more dynamic. A good GM will make a good experience. A bad GM will give you a bad experience. Good players, will give you. And we discussed about that before. So to me, I'd rather be in that part here, where we follow the rules and it's going to be good. Here, it's just.
I think that's why gamers, maybe with my tastes, end up talking about improving, like why you find topics of conversation or videos tend to go toward the idea of, you can play better, or when you're in this situation, consider this. I mean, I think that's part of it. The only way to get a better game in the types of games that we've grown up playing were to get better as players.
Yeah.
Or to develop a backlog of perceptions or experiences. Yeah.
And when I'm listening to you, or just, for example, your video of the Dream Team today, I watched, you've been fortunate to have good groups that you had really good experience with.
Yeah.
And these are magic. When you have that, you don't need these rules to structure and organize everything. You have the group that does it. So together as a group, it works well. Right. The game is dynamic. It's even easier because you can interpret the rules. You can bend them a little bit, flip them a little bit, not too much. Not becoming a house ruler of the devil.
Rules is written.
Yeah, but you can do your thing a little bit. You can stretch the game a little bit. So you have fun in these situations. So obviously, but it's so rare and it's more work. It's harder. It's so harder.
And that's the sad part. I guess there's a certain amount of luck in finding appropriate players for you, and I think there's probably also skill in knowing where to go and knowing how to recruit. I mean, there's an edginess to some gamers, like, well, I'm not going to play that game, or I love role-playing games passionately as long as we're talking about these two titles, and forget the 10,000 other titles, and we make it hard on each other maybe to develop that initial trust where you want to sit down and play with them in your house or whatever, and so that's another barrier, and that's why these innovations in games, so you can get to the good experience quickly. It makes good sense. It seems ridiculous to oppose the innovation. And you can't sit back and say, or you can't logically sit back and say, look, it works in my group, therefore it must work in yours. Unless you're willing to invite people into your group and share those skills, then there's no logical reason on earth why Group B has to have the same experience as Group A, especially if somebody in that group is a dick and no one knows how to spot them, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, it doesn't. Yeah, no, that's for sure. So now, my question to you is this: what bothers you with organizing in advance so much.
From a character perspective, if I'm expressing if I'm organizing, or if I'm projecting what I want to happen for this character, pretty much nothing bothers me about that, unless I have so much control over that happening that I don't need the game for it.
I don't think games do that. Otherwise, it's boring.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I'm pretty sensitive to it from the story perspective. From the character perspective, I want to have realistic goals and dreams and ambitions, and I feel like it's not a very satisfying character if I don't. It becomes more and more just me, and I like me. I get to play me every day. When I'm playing the game, I'm interested in trying on different perspectives, different attitudes, making decisions that I perhaps wouldn't, things like that. So goals are a big part of that. So from the character perspective, I don't have a problem with the character having desires in advance and trying to attain them. I just don't want to know, and I don't want to have much say over attaining them in terms of a mechanical incentive. I just want the system to be there to make outcome resolution believable.
Ah, man.
That's all.
Yeah. But that's the thing. This is where, because I feel like you're giving up on some agency, not being able to not being able to
Okay.
foresee.
So there's gamist, to use a term, agency, where at a certain point where I have a certain feeling about how I want an outcome to be, I can apply mechanical leverage to attain it. And there's agency using my wit and skill. No one is going to balk me, right? With this tool, the character, in this situation, the environment, with this system, can I achieve that?
That's a good, really good distinction. That's a really good distinction.
Right, yeah. So I think that's what we get at when we talk about risk and reward. That's the heart of it. Why people don't like style points or fate points or bennies or whatever you want to call them, because it reduces. Don't really understand the dice system, how it might work, or they don't understand what the point represents because they haven't played the game, because they don't like that thing.
But imagine you play a game and you want to use your agency, the way you just described it, right? You use the character as a tool, and you use your wit and your luck and your skills, and Now, let's say you have a couple goals you want to accomplish as a character, right? You have needs and beliefs and stuff in your head as a character and as a player, but nobody else knows. You keep it to yourself, and you're part of this group where I have my agenda, and and let's see if I'm going to happen when I'm going to look back. Now,
it's really cool when they notice, even when you didn't tell them. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. So now, what if the game will reward you for that? Instead of you just have a personal satisfaction for yourself. Now, what if the game rewards you for that?
I don't think it can reward me beyond my personal satisfaction of attaining the goal. That's kind of my point.
But the thing with these games that mechanically embed the narrative structures like that, because they actually reward you for good play.
Sure, but I mean, so did basic role playing in '81. So I mean, like, I wasn't eaten by the monster. I wasn't killed by the cultists, and I now get to improve based on what I did. And the improvement was based on understanding, and it was totally what you're talking about, just in a different form. I mean, these ideas exist, but the payoff for me personally, I can't speak for all gamers everywhere. The payoff for me personally has always been in the outcome. The spending experience points on a character or getting to mechanically advance the character in some way or gain a bonus or whatever it is that the game does to reward you, I'm not in it for that. I was never interested in climbing levels and level-based games. For me, it's about getting it, solving the mystery or whatever.
You see, man, you're making some good points. It's interesting because I totally understand. I really understand. And I realize right now that I never had the opportunity to have this experience because I fell short on playing these games in the past. And so what happens is that I was frustrated, and then I find out about these games that helps me to,
to do that.
Yeah, to do that. So I never had the opportunity to play a game where I can have my personal satisfaction, my personal reward of accomplishing with my own skills and my own wits as a player through the character, right? Just the way you describe.
Right.
I never had the opportunity. I never had the chance to finish. I start many times. I never had the chance to finish.
That's a shame. I mean, do we need them? I mean, you've got these new games that are giving you what you want. Do we need them? But I mean, for me, this is how I grew up playing, and after experimenting with other play styles, it's what I've come back to as what I want to experience. It seems right and good, but that's just my preference.
But there is something though in your style, in your approach that you like. There is something in the way you describe. It's also the camaraderie, the friendship, the thing that. Because now together as a group, we manage to have fun. And it's not because the game is providing it necessarily, it's because we are making it happening.
We're making it happen,
so there is something more. But you need, though, to be lucky to get it with a good group. Or to work your ass off to construct your group, build your group. After maybe 5 or 6 sessions, okay, everybody's on the same page now. 12 hours later, 15 hours later.
Or longer.
Or longer sometimes.
I've played with groups that didn't radically change until everybody had run the game. And then the lights come on. And even if they were already experienced GMs in other games, it was like, this moment where, right, this is the genre, or this is the tone that the game is going for. I didn't get it from just your description. I didn't get it from going through character creation. But now that I've had to sit down and craft an environment and populate it with people, now I get it. And then play gets so much better after that. I mean, it comes down to reading the manual, in a sense. You read it differently when you're the player than when you have to be responsible.
Bro, you need to talk to your players. Guys,
I'm hanging up.
You guys need some serious discussion with the players.
But how? How can I talk to the players? Well, first of all, don't be a dick when you talk to the players.
Oh man, that after you find the right game.
Immediately after.
But yeah, so well, I think we. But man, you just sparked something in my head now. I'm really gonna go back to. I was already going back to the more traditional game. I don't know how to say it now.
Sure. I mean, I'm not called traditional. I mean, everybody will know what you mean. It's just that it just makes me laugh because indie is separate from traditional by not being traditional. But what is traditional? We don't know because we're not bothering to describe it. We're just defining indie. So
to me, the traditional is the task-based resolution. With the GM. Really straightforward, pass or fail. Nothing.
But there are so many games that weren't like that are just as old. So
I'm sorry?
There were so many games that aren't like that are just as old.
Give me some example of that.
degrees of success get introduced in a lot of percentile-based games. So the idea of succeeding with advantage, or failing with disadvantage, this kind of thing, has been represented for a long time, which colors narration. It's not as cut and dried. But a great game to help kind of cross over from one side to the other side, I find, is the Fantasy Flight game Star Wars. There's so much of that game which feels like a game out of the 80s or something like that, you know, the traditional game, and yet the dice mechanic completely upends the way that you would approach.
It is. Oh yeah, this game is a modern game, like just like 7C, I would say, you know, in true sense of the form, with the dice thing, the narrative dice.
Right. Yeah. So you find that, well, this is what I've always done. What do I need these dice for? And then when you start using them, it's like, wow, this is what I've always done, and now I've got this thing to help me do it.
There you go. Yeah.
But the rest of the game still feels comfortable and familiar in the way that it applies game concepts. But yeah, what is trad? What is indie? Who knows? But
well, I think yeah, it's just.
You've ordered Dungeon Crawl Classics, have you not? You're going to be going.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, but what I was saying is that recently I was going back again to the more traditional games. There's something with these games. There's something going on. I'm reading them, and I'm interested in some of them, like Pendragon, like Blue Planet, like Aces and Eights, like Mifa Rug. Recently, I was going back at it. It's a really simulationist game.
So I'm looking. Are you trying Pendragon?
Yeah.
Based on what you said, even just tonight, I would recommend you trying Pendragon. That's a really rewarding game.
Yeah, this game has a mechanic for emotion. It's one of the foundation, like how the game tells you how you feel.
The game gives you a guidance saying, this is what your gut is telling you, and then you have to make a choice. What are you going to do? Are you going to go with your gut, or are you going to resist? And there are mechanical consequences.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, that is really innovative. It's an old game, and it's really innovative in itself.
Yeah.
Now there's games right now. There is a trend going on right now on Kickstarter where there's a emotionally driven base mechanic. So the game is telling you how your character is supposed to feel in that scene. This is the emotion going on, like.
Right.
So there was a game. I think it's The Veil. It's a cyberpunk game. I don't know if you've seen it on Kickstarter.
The Sprawl?
The Sprawl or The Veil? I don't know. But anyway, so there is a mechanic into it, emotion based. So but not. I mean, like games like Pendragon was already doing it back in the days.
Yep.
But yeah, they go in that direction now. There's a trend towards that. So telling you how you feel, so you don't have to decide as a player to play the game. You have to buy what the results of the dice.
And this has been an argument for a long time. It's like games have been telling you your injury status from the beginning. And some games told you about fatigue, and some games told you about aging effects and things like that. But it's like emotion was just not done. Well, until Pendragon, I guess. But why not? Where agency comes in is, am I going to act on it or not? And if not, what consequence does that have? Just like in real life. And I'm horribly injured. Am I going to rush into battle anyway? What's the consequence of that? It's exactly the same. There's no reason to fear the emotion mechanic, and it's really cool when it's there. Just like with the Star Wars dice and things like that, saying, okay, look, this additional thing other than success has happened. Tell us about it.
You made me realize one thing, is that I think I've neglected a big part of the hobby. I think I've been focused on the game too much and on the experience too much, and I forgot that there is fun. I kind of feel like I might forgot that there is a part of fun that is there to, meet people that doesn't play like you, and find a way to play with them. And
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of, I feel like I run away from that aspect of the hobby, and I focus on game that gives me my fun, quick, fast, easy, efficiently, and I let go of just the meeting of the mind kind of thing. I meet that person, and together we're gonna try to have fun, So let's
Yeah.
talk, let's have a conversation, let's try to meet halfway and stuff like that. And there is something interesting to be, I guess, in that aspect of the hobby as well, right? It's
That's
not
a
just
Yeah, that's a huge part of it for me. I mean, when I started with the group that I play with here in Daejeon, they're all strangers. I mean, I didn't know them. It's just that because they were talking about Star Wars, and then I heard that they used to play D&D. I took a risk and I said, "Do you guys want to play a Star Wars role playing game?" You know, and I don't know what they're like, and we talked to each other over a couple of days and weeks and decide that yes, we're going to play, and this group of 6 people is going to form the group, and this is what we like and don't like about Star Wars. I mean, we're doing the establishing before the first pitch kind of stuff, and getting to know each other, and then as we play the game, I'm only experiencing them as their characters. There's in character conversation and out of character conversation, but most of the game is moving forward in character, and I'm seeing the people that they chose to play, and we're all laughing together and having fun, having shared imaginary experiences, and then when the game is over, we leave, go home. Not a lot of socialization as people, but yet now 2 years later, these guys are close friends, and we don't talk about the game much at all anymore unless we're playing it. Somehow that switched. Instead of a complete focus on the game and complete focus on character, now it's focus on each other as friends and people. And the game is a regularly scheduled part of our lives. But so there really is something to be said for going out and making it work as a group. I
yeah,
think.
yeah, definitely. This is this is interesting. It's really eye opening for me, this conversation, because I feel like I'm going back full circle at the beginning. I remember me when I first arrived in town here. I organized my Shadowrun group. I was
Yeah.
talking about it on my channel, and I had some of the worst sessions.
You always look so sad in your videos.
Oh man, some of the worst sessions I have these days. But these dudes, I'm still friends with them. When I meet them on the street, we still talk about that some of the runs that they trying to make that was bullshit and was not happening right, and so we still laugh about these sessions. To me, they're some of the worst sessions I ever had, but we still talk about them, and we still laugh about them. So there's something to be said about that as well. And
I wonder what
and
it would be like if you decided to run Shadowrun today. Not for those guys, but for a different group of people. I wonder how that experience would go.
that's really a good question. That's really interesting. I don't know. I
Of
really
course,
don't know.
maybe you'll want to try Anarchy instead, the light version, the Q-based version
I'm
of
not, I'm not
Shadowrun, which is coming.
honestly. I don't care about rule light anymore. Or I like the complexity now. I like
Good.
the preciseness.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I don't. And yeah, I know I used to be more rule light. Yeah, we need space for narration and story, but now I don't think it's important anymore that much. Yeah.
I think it's important. I think both are important at different stages. I think that you need if you're going to be playing for a long time, if you want to play lots of different games, let's put it that way, if you want to get better at being a player, let's add that in, then playing a very heavy game has some very important things to teach you about scenes, about managing information, about remembering who's in the room. Make I don't really like the idea of spotlight time in terms of narration. That's up to the players to take care of. I don't see why that gets stuck on the GM all the time. But it's really easy to bypass the quiet guy. Like in a game like Shadowrun with initiative phases, if you're shy and don't want to say anything, it's really easy to miss several phases of combat unless the GM is paying attention to everybody. I think that's important. There's a lot of things about really complex games which are good to learn. But the rules light game gives you that space that you just mentioned. There's nothing there. You can't go through run through a long 2-page procedure of dealing with the matrix or whatever. You just have to narrate it and have to make it valuable based on the description that you're getting from them and harnessing for forward motion from you. So playing both styles, getting good at both of them, very, very helpful, I feel.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's now I feel like more and more that you need to play different games. You need to play different styles, different kind of group, different approach to forge yourself a set of skills as a gamer. That obviously that's really important.
Do you think it's important to, or as important to know what you like, or also know what you don't like?
I think it's the same thing, but on the other way around. Like a negative, like a photo negative.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Knowing what you don't like is obviously telling you a little bit of
what you like.
Yeah, but it's not logically though. I mean, it's not because you know what you don't like that you know necessarily what you like though.
You still have to seek it, yeah.
You still have to find out. Sometimes there's nuances, but what's more important? Knowing what you like. If I have to make a choice, I would say knowing what you like is more important than knowing what you don't like.
Right.
Because I think that knowing what you like is a positive perspective on things, right? You go, this is what I want, I go for that, instead of trying to avoid what you don't like. Because sometimes you don't like something in a game or whatever, and you avoid it, and you become super defensive toward it, and you miss on some good opportunities. I remember, let's say for 2 years ago, I was against simulation. I was like, simulationism game. What the fuck are you guys trying to do? You're wasting my time. And now I'm going back at it, and I find it really interesting. I find it nice. I wanna try these games. I wanna have that experience. So, saying
your experience of that experience. I mean, because the game itself has a certain quality, and then it's always the people that are playing it that set the final tone. So, simulation your way.
It's not necessarily, I know, but that's another thing in RPG that makes it so hard. It's because, and this is the same thing as I mentioned earlier with the guy in the comment section of my video who says, I don't agree with you because me and my group, we've been doing this without the rules. We don't need the rules because we are able to play. So in the end of good people, of good gamers, Shadowrun can shine.
Sure. Some of my best role-playing experiences came from 2nd edition Shadowrun.
Yeah.
And just amazing. But everybody in the room knew what they were doing. The game master was great. We all liked each other. There are lots of reasons why that game was good. Shadowrun was a piece of it.
You see, that's the fact that you still the layer of interpretation. It's so important in this hobby. Like some people will make a good game bad, and some people will make a bad game really good, and so that the fact that depends on how you want to do it makes theoretical discussion in this hobby so complicated. That's why some people they don't even care. They say they get that point and they don't see why we talk about it, right?
I mean, that's how our conversation tonight started. I mean, just to do a quick recap, story. when my group plays, at the end of the day, we have a story for that day or that month or that year or whatever. There's a story is created. There's no other way to describe it. I'm telling a history of past events, and there's drama and whatnot. It's a story. And what you were talking about is also a story, or it will become a story. And we're both talking about story, except I don't want any story when I start. I just want it at the end. And that's where we start. If I say the word story, you hear your story and I hear my story, and we don't understand that we're not talking about the same thing. It's
That
madness.
that was your point in your video. That we talk about the same thing, but we don't meet. You said that, and you do this with your hand, and you said that you said something like it's heartbreaking or it's heart something.
It's disheartening.
Yeah, this is a word that I don't hear often. This is a good English word. So yeah, I was listening to your video. I was like, man, that much. I was surprised how far you felt, like how disconnected you felt.
Yeah,
You know,
it's important.
yeah. And when in the comment section of my video, when I said we're gonna have to agree to disagree, I was like, man, I don't understand why you stick to your thing. And same conversation I had with Null Inquisitor, right? Null Inquisitor is the one that triggered the conversation for me, because when he said, I don't want to go for a second ed. It's bullshit what they did. Like, why? Why? This is so great. These rules are perfect. That's what was missing. So to me, I couldn't understand. Now I get, these conversations are great. Now I can open up my mind a little bit, get some, because sometimes you get lost in your passion, close your mind a little bit on the other's taste and perspective, and it's easy to get lost.
It's easy. We make it easy. So, all right. Well, I think we have said what we wanted to say.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're going to do a video response, I look forward to hearing.
Yeah. Today, now it's 4:44.
Sorry.
But yeah, I'm gonna make a video. I'm gonna make a video response, and I'm gonna include some of the chat we had here in it.
Awesome.
And before we leave, I just want to give you props for the work you're doing on RPG a Day.
Oh, thank you.
Doing an amazing work, amazing job, man.
Are you going to participate?
No. Oh, I almost wanted to use the 30 question from the indie or the indie of the day. So I almost said to myself, let's use these.
When was the last time you felt deprotagonized?
These questions are hilarious.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Hilarious. I mean, I wanted to do it, and I read them again, and I by watching how pretentious they were, like the questions are so heavy. I mean, I said, fuck it, nah, it's too much. I mean, it's a joke. It's a big joke,
Yeah.
But anyway, they're really funny. But yeah, I just wanted to give you props on your job. You're doing a good job with the questions.
Thanks a lot. It's been really cool to see what people are saying about things and some of the perspectives. And I mean, some of the simple questions like dice. A lot of people were thinking like, of course it's going to be dice. But then when you start reading these thousands of responses saying, I like dice and here's why. And the way people are talking about it is the same, but they just stop there. They don't just stop there. They go on and say, and I also like dice apps, and I also like diceless, and these are the reasons why I like those things. And you start to find these commonalities between people. And if your point is to be positive, RPG a Day is to be positive and share and find connections and explore a community. If that's your point, then wow, people have demonstrated such community on such a simple little thing. And there's lots of neat things to uncover when you start going through and reading what other people are saying.
Yeah, definitely. And you get to know people as well.
Yeah.
You get to know them. You get to find new channels. you know,
So
and
many.
and it creates momentum for the vlogger as well. They start to make videos. They realize, oh, it's not that hard, and it becomes a daily thing and creates a wave of video making. Yeah.
So I hope through September we'll see a lot of video responses to things that people didn't have time for this month. So there's a lot of material out there now, and there's more to come. So anyway, thanks for talking to me in the middle of your night.
No problem. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. And for the 6 or 7 people who are watching, thanks for doing that. And this will be up for anybody to watch very soon. Take care.